Enduring images on the streets of Tehran a year ago. Unsurpassed brutality meted out on the people of Iran. Now, a 3-month investigation by The Guardian and the Bureau of Investigative Journalism has penetrated the very heart of Iran's military elite, the Revolutionary Guard, the defenders of the revolution. These men are breaking every taboo and openly criticising their leadership. They speak of rifts and open dissent in their ranks. They tell us how the regime was gripped by panic and nearly collapsed.
They were terrified. They had prepared themselves to leave the country and flee to Syria, just in case the regime was to collapse. Khamenei's Airbus 330 was waiting, ready to get them out of Iran.
The Revolutionary Guard are the backbone of the Iranian Revolution. Khomeini's fighters, it is they who make the laws and enforce them. We've gained unprecedented access to recently defected high-ranking officers who have now turned on the regime.
I had the authority to investigate anyone, regardless of their position, whether they were the president, any authority within the country, the head of the judiciary, leader of the parliament, or anyone else. This authority is given to me from the Commission Article 115 of the Constitution, meaning the highest authority in the regime.
Yes, we were part of it. And yes, we cannot separate ourselves from it. We didn't want to do it, but due to the pressure we were under, we were compelled to do these things. But the first chance I got myself out of there.
I myself was a member of the Revolutionary Guard Besiege Unit 153. The forces knew me well, and I was identified immediately.
All these men have defected, fled the regime, now part of an international diaspora scattered across the globe. The tourist delights of Cappadocia in central Turkey, a strange place to meet a man who was at the heart of the Iranian regime.
The order to shoot at the protesters was given by Brigadier General Ahmed Vahidi, who is currently the Minister of Defense. I know this because I was in the unit of the Revolutionary Guard when the order came through.
Until 6 months ago, Colonel Mohammed Hussein Torkaman was a card-carrying member of the Revolutionary Guard's Intelligence Division. At the time of the elections last June, he was inside Ayatollah Khamenei's compound, overseeing security logistics for the Supreme Leader, the President, and their offices.
Because of my job, every 5 days I would meet with high-ranking officials, like Mr. Ahmadinejad and his ministers. I could see the fear in them all. The fear and panic was obvious.
Now an asylum seeker in Turkey with his wife and young son, Colonel Torkaman is wary of mixing with the other Iranian exiles in the small town where they've been placed. He was, after all, until just a few months ago, a loyal son of the regime. He spends most of the day on his computer, connecting with friends and trying to forget. He says he left the regime in disgust. He told us that Ahmadinejad and Khomeini, uncertain of the loyalty of their own security forces, shipped in foreign mercenaries to bolster the regime.
The forces they had chosen to do the shooting at people were from the Quds Force. The majority of them are Lebanese or Palestinian. They don't speak Farsi, the Persian language. These were the ones who were given permission to open fire. The majority of shooting at the demonstrators was coming from snipers who'd been placed on the rooftops of high buildings. It was not coming from the forces on the streets. I knew where the snipers were because I had the drawings of the security operations.
These are the plans he was responsible for drawing up, showing the strategic positions of the security forces, blocking protesters from the presidential and supreme leaders' offices. Red is for the Revolutionary Guard, yellow for Khomeini's protection unit, green is for the plain-clothed militia. But he wasn't just confined to the president's office. He was sent to the notorious Evin prison.
They had built places within the prisons, specifically for torturing people. There's a basement in Evin prison, where I was called in to look at the ventilation. It was extremely bad. Disease was spreading because of the prisoners' open wounds that had been caused by torture. When I was there was this young woman, the daughter of a martyr, whose name I prefer not disclose. I think it would not be right. I remember she grabbed hold of my leg and begged me to ask this man called Yassin, the torturer of Evin prison, to stop hurting her. The situation is extremely bad in Iran. They claim to be a religious state, a government based on religion. Well, I can say right now that God does not exist in Iran.
He later told me that she'd been raped. It was seeing the victims of torture firsthand that made him think of leaving. But it was scenes like these during the Holy Festival of Ashura in December last year that were the final straw. Mayhem on the streets.
Look, something very important happened here during Ashura. The violence, I think, was very similar to what we'd seen in the days after the June elections. The people were attacking all the government institutions, and the regime was once again unable to stop them. Protesters were even run over by cars. Yes, it's true. The government was nearly overthrown on the day of Ashura. I witnessed it.
It was after this that the real reign of terror began. Colonel Turkman knew that if the regime fell, he would go with it.
I was an intelligence agent, and I was aware of all the confidential affairs of our leaders, so it was possible that I, like former agents, would be murdered. They could kill me too, and so there was no guarantee for my life.
This footage was shot by Iranians at extreme risk to themselves. Fed out to the world via the internet, it paints a terrifying picture of Iran over the past 6 months. A country where public hangings have become a favoured method of intimidation. Amnesty International says there have been 115 so far this year. Despite the oppression, Iranians have found new ways to voice their dissent. These images were fed to the internet in the past few days. Here, as Ahmadinejad addresses the crowd, the people heckle him with one word: unemployment. Iran's economy is faltering. Even on the Iranian banknotes, they scrawl slogans of dissent. June is the month of battle. This one says, "Death to Khamenei." Khamenei is trembling with fear. Untraceable messages expressing contempt for the regime. But the students are still defiant. Holding sheets of paper, they hide their faces from the cameras of the regime. This was a demonstration just 10 days ago. Inevitably, it triggers memories of what happened a year ago. There are many young Iranians who will never forget those extraordinary events of June 2009. A mix of anger and hope, buoyed by a new sense of freedom as they massed in the streets.
When I speak to my friends on the internet, they're very pessimistic about life in the future, because there's nothing they can hope for or be happy for. Over there, everything is under control. Photography, journalism, the authorities, they don't allow people to live the way they want to live. They tell us, we'll tell you how to live, how to take photos, how to work.
Javad Mukhini was on the streets during those days. Now he's had to leave Iran, seeking refuge in Turkey because of the photos he took. They're stunning images, but they cost him his job. because he was working for the Revolutionary Guard press agency Fars News, a tool of the state. And these were images that the regime in Iran